The reality is this ministry is worth it. We are serving the one true living God who shed his blood on the cross and rose from the grave, that people would come to him, that human beings would come and know him. And the wording I want to highlight in this psalm is trust in the Lord and do good, dwell in the land and befriend faithfulness. Friends are not made overnight. The command is not, hey, go over and introduce yourself to faithfulness. The command is not, go be acquainted with faithfulness. Like, hey, I know this guy, his name is Faithfulness. No, it's befriend faithfulness. That's something that's made over time. That's made with commitment. That's made intentionally. And so that's the command, is befriend faithfulness, and you will see the reward. The righteous will inherit the land. The wicked will be no more.
I am yours, I am yours, I am yours, send me, Lord. I am yours, I am yours, I am yours.
Welcome to the Gospel-Centered Pro-Life Podcast, a podcast designed to equip, encourage, and challenge you in pro-life ministry, and always with a focus on the gospel. Stay tuned.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Gospel-Centered Pro-Life Podcast. We provide this podcast with the hopes of equipping and encouraging people who are laboring on those front lines at the very gates of hell, right in front of an abortion center where moms are making the last decision on whether an innocent little human being is going to live or die. Very heavy work that we do. And so we really hope that by providing these podcasts, we not only give some good practical advice, but really lift your spirits and encourage all of you in this very difficult ministry to know that you are doing something that very few people will do, and that is so important and so valuable. So I am Vicky Kaziorg. I serve as the National Sidewalk Training Director for Love Life. I also serve with Elijah, who's going to introduce himself in a second, and with Carrie, we do the sidewalk coordinating of volunteers for the Charlotte area, Charlotte, North Carolina.
And I'm Elijah Boyer. I am one of the sidewalk outreach coordinators here in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I also make ice cream, but that's a different topic.
Oh, yeah. Good ice cream. And when it's the end of the ice cream season for Elijah, he gets to bring us cups of ice cream, which we all appreciate. Actually, frozen yogurt. All right. Well, we're going to start off this podcast with a story. I'm going to try and condense it. A wonderful, wonderful counselor, Jonathan Dellinger from South Florida, sent me this story. I believe it happened January 3rd. It was in early January that it happened, but he wrote out the whole story. So I'm going to try and summarize it. And if I don't do it justice, maybe Jonathan can set the record straight and write some comments on this podcast. But they were at the clinic right when it opened, and they saw a young lady waiting for them to open. She came right away to talk with them, got out of the car, took their literature, and the conversation developed, and she was very open to speaking with them. And she told Jonathan that the reason she was there for an abortion is that she had been drinking a lot, smoking a lot of weed, and then she found out she was pregnant. And so she was afraid that she was going to do damage to the baby, so she's there to kill the baby. And Jonathan, I shouldn't laugh. I mean, that twisted logic is actually common.
Yeah.
I hear that sort of thing a lot. And Jonathan rightly pointed out how twisted that was. Well, the baby might be damaged, probably not, but I mean, the baby could be, but killing the baby to prevent damage to the baby, do you see how kind of off that is? And she did. She claimed that she knew God, but she was just, terrified. And so Jonathan actually said she easily was talked into going just next door to a pregnancy resource center. And when they get there, they're hoping that they could do the ultrasound right away, but the pregnancy resource center told them no, they could not, but she could come back tomorrow. And she said, it's all right. It's all right. Jonathan's trying to talk him into, please see her right away. And the woman just said, it's all right. I'll just go in to Planned Parenthood to get the ultrasound. And Jonathan is thinking, that is the worst thing that could happen. I can't let her do that. So he's pleading with her. He's calling other pregnancy resource centers and saying, no, don't do that. And he's calling everyone he can think of. And while he's doing that, one of the nurses, I believe it was a nurse, comes out of the pregnancy resource center, quickly assesses the situation and says, I'll do whatever it takes. You come on in, honey, and we'll get you that ultrasound. And they did. They brought her in. They showed her the baby. She made a solid choice for life. And Jonathan was just rejoicing, he and his teammates, because they saw God all over this. It was the Lord had engineered such an impossible situation and literally opened the doors of that pregnancy resource center and got that mom in. She was in there for quite a while. I think he said like an hour or more. And when she came out, she was just overjoyed. Solid choice for life, hugging them and rejoicing and thanking them over and over again that they had been there and for what they had done. So the tip for me right away is when you are with an abortion-minded woman, and maybe she's made a tentative choice for life, you don't even know, but she is still highly abortion vulnerable. Ultrasounds can make a huge difference. And if they walk back into the abortion center, that abortion center is going to try to convince them to get an abortion. And they are still very vulnerable. So do just what Jonathan did. Do everything in your power to have someone see them for the ultrasound immediately. So what I'll do is if I'm on the sidewalk and I've got a mom who has said, yes, I'm willing to go get an ultrasound, and we do not have the mobile ultrasound unit right there, which sometimes we don't, then I will call a local pregnancy resource center and I'll say, hey, my name is Vicky. I am standing on the sidewalk of the Latrobe Abortion Center with a mom who is willing to come see her baby. And I don't want to say who wants an abortion or anything like that. I don't want to embarrass the mother, and I don't want to put that back in her mind. But by identifying myself as being on the sidewalk in front of an abortion center with the mom is code that is quickly understood. This is an abortion vulnerable mom, and she needs to be seen right away. Do everything in your power to have her seen in an ultrasound right away. So do you have any tips to add?
I would just say to be bold and not be afraid to say, the hard truths, like, this doesn't make any sense, right? To not mince words, not be a jerk about it, and not just be mean or anything like that, but to share the truth, as it is.
Yeah.
So.
And to expose that twisted thinking. Sometimes we don't want to say to them, that's nuts. But sometimes saying that in a kind way is really what they need to hear. They are not of sound mind. Evil and sin makes us not of sound mind.
Yeah.
And one of our jobs is to bring back sound mind, sound-mindedness to the moms. So, okay, so this next, the topic that we're going to be talking about today is so good. It is so good. One of our best. And the reason I can say that is because Elijah came up with it, and I turned his thoughts into the article, but it is so good. I am so excited about it. So Elijah's going to kind of do most of the talking. This was his idea, and it was based on an experience that he actually had. And so we're going to talk about that as part of the podcast. And this article, again, can be found, if you want to read it in more depth than we will probably have the time to go into. You can find this at our sidewalksforlife.com site. But anyway, so take it away, Elijah, with what happened that sparked this podcast. First of all, the story with that mom.
Yeah. So, well, first of all, the reason I wanted to share these things is because these are things that I wrestle with, and I know that I'm sure Vicky wrestles with, and these are things that I do, and that I preach this message to myself. Okay.
Yes.
So we minister or more specifically, I minister, and a lot of the folks on our team here in Charlotte, we minister at an abortion center that's kind of on a hill, and it's inside of a larger medical facility. And so thankfully, we don't have a pro-abortion presence as much. We do have people who come by and yell at us, and we might have people come by every once in a while, get in our face and that kind of thing, but it's not an everyday thing. Well, getting yelled at is every day, but the in the face part, that's not every day. And but our challenges are much more natural. It's like the environment itself is against us. And so we are not able to have very many interactions. And when we do, it's not often that we hear about moms choosing life. We know that they're happening. We know that moms are choosing life. We know, people see the signs driving by and they choose life for their babies. There's a lot that God's doing that we don't see with our eyes, but it's not very often that maybe 3 times a month, if that, or we have firm confirmation that a mom chose life. And so the other day, a mom drove by, she came around in her car, and she just wanted to show us her child. It was about a 6-month-old baby that she had come to abort at that abortion center. And the reason she wanted to come show us was because she wanted to encourage us to keep going. She had come with that child for an abortion, and she wanted to encourage us to keep going. From what I understand, she saw the signs and she spoke to the counselor, and then she left, and she said she pulled up the street and she cried a little bit. From what I understand, and I just want to say, I could be mistaken about this. I don't want to say something on this podcast that's not true. But from what I understand, when she chose life for her baby, she didn't tell us, right? Mm-hmm. She just left. And so that was a great encouragement. And so I know if you've been in this ministry any length of time, you might have the question come into your mind to quit. And I'm going to be totally candid with you. I've had the thought, man, should I really keep doing this? Right?
Why are we here?
Yeah.
What are we doing? Yeah. What is the use? And in fact, we get asked that a lot from the abortion people. Don't you have something better to do with your time? Right?
Yeah, right. I've had family members ask, make similar things. It's like, this is a tough ministry, and there's a lot of sacrifices that are made to do this, not just for you personally, but for our families, right? There are sacrifices that are made. I know that my wife would rather I was home sometimes than on the sidewalk, right?
Sure.
I know, there are days, I don't share this to toot my own horn, but my heart is to relate to you who I know are making sacrifices. There are days I'm on the sidewalk and then I go to work after. I don't get home until very late at night. I know my wife would rather I was home that day.
Right.
There are sacrifices that are made. And so the question, is it worth it, can cross your mind. Vicky, do you have any more to add?
Is it worth it is something that I think we all feel guilty when we think that. Is it worth it standing here on the sidewalk? And I have had so many sidewalk volunteers tell me it's not worth it. I'm not seeing any fruit, and they quit.
Yeah.
And we try our best to remind them why we're there. And it's not for the fruit, it's for out of obedience to God, honoring his command to love our neighbor as ourselves and to speak for those who cannot speak. But I think we'd probably not be totally truthful with ourselves if we said that thought has never entered our mind. But, and I love this podcast because I think you're going to help us to answer, not only is it worth it, but how to come full circle following that question of, is it worth it, with, kind of a biblical admonition of where you go with that question.
Yeah.
But it is harder when we don't see fruit, when we don't see tangible fruit. That's when we ask it. And that's when I ask it, really, is because where I serve is different from where Elijah serves. I'm probably at the busiest abortion center in the Southeast. We will see sometimes as many as 100 moms come to kill their baby. And so just statistically, we see so many more moms. So of course we see many more saves, and it's an easier environment. It is getting harder lately, but it is an easier environment than what Elijah faces. But when there are weeks when there's no saves or minimal saved babies, that's when I find myself I don't want to go in the next day. and I'm finding myself questioning, is it really worth it, what I'm sacrificing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we want to look at Psalm 37, verses 1 through 7, and then for time, we'll skip to verse 9 through 11. Fret not yourself because of evildoers. Be not envious of wrongdoers, for they will soon fade like the grass and wither like the green herb. Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and befriend faithfulness. Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust in him, and he will act. He will bring forth your righteousness as the light and your justice as the noonday. For the evildoers shall be cut off, but those who wait for the Lord shall inherit the land. In just a little while, the wicked will be no more. Though you look carefully at his place, he will not be there, but the meek shall inherit the land. The reality is this ministry is worth it. We are serving the one true living God who shed his blood on the cross and rose from the grave, that people would come to him, that human beings would come and know him. And the wording I want to highlight in this psalm is trust in the Lord and do good, dwell in the land and befriend faithfulness. Friends are not made overnight. The command is not, hey, go over and introduce yourself to faithfulness. The command is not, go be acquainted with faithfulness. Like, hey, I know this guy, his name is Faithfulness. No, it's befriend faithfulness. That's something that's made over time. That's made with commitment. That's made intentionally. And so that's the command, is befriend faithfulness, and you will see the reward. The righteous will inherit the land. The wicked will be no more.
Yeah, that's so good. And as you were talking, Elijah, I was reading through that psalm and underlining the words of what we are to do, the verbs, because they're so good. Trust, do, dwell, befriend, delight, commit, trust. And the result is that he will give us the desire of our heart. He will act. And I love that it, along with the whole idea of befriending faithfulness and how you describe that, that's just so powerful. It's faithfulness is not just like this kind of unimportant side thing. We are embracing faithfulness, and all of these action verbs in that verse are basically how we're befriending faithfulness. We're delighting in the Lord, trusting in the Lord. We're committing our way to the Lord. And then we're recognizing that that's our job. His job is to act.
Yeah.
He will act when we have done all of those things. And I think that's so powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. And so our job is to be obedient, right?
Yeah.
Our job, we're not as much responsible for the fruit. We're responsible for obeying our master. You know, there's another psalm that basically says that we are an axe in the hands of the Lord, right? We are the tool in his hands, and we have to be faithful. There's a song that my wife and I like. It's called Take Courage by Lindy Conant. And in the bridge, it says, there is a yes in our hearts that echoes through eternity, simple obedience that changes history. Right.
You going to sing it for us?
Yeah. Let me, but I'll have my kids come in and sing it for you. Or you know what? Abigail, come
awesome.
sing it. Yeah.
You could play guitar though.
Yeah, I could play guitar.
Right,
That doesn't automatically mean that I can sing. You know? Yeah, but so human beings fell because of disobedience, right? And so then it would make sense that obedience then brings life. Obedience, it's something that God is after. He's after our hearts, right? And so we are to be obedient. Scripture is filled with example after example of someone who was obedient despite the fruit that they saw, right? You know, Noah, we know him for building the ark, but he was a preacher. And, you know, he didn't win any converts. Okay. You know, it was him and his family, right?
And he'd never seen rain. That's the part of
Yeah.
it that I don't think I knew when I was reading the children's Bible about it. He had never seen rain. There'd never been rain on the earth. And God tells him this whole earth's going to be flooded, filled with water. And it's going to rain 40 days and 40 nights. He'd never seen rain.
Yeah.
And he still faithfully built a boat.
Yeah, he obeyed, and we're alive today because of it, right? I mean, if humanity had been snuffed out, we never would have been born,
Yeah. My one of my very favorite prophets is Jeremiah, and he so perfectly fits in with this discussion because Jeremiah faithfully was a prophet of God's word, and no one listened to him. I think he had one convert, one friend. I forget Baruch. I forget the one person that listened to him, and that was alongside him. And he had a hard life. There was a lot that God told him he could not do. He could not marry. He could not go to funerals. I mean, he dressed in sackcloth and he ministered for over 40 years and saw no fruit, none. And yet every one of his prophecies ultimately was fulfilled, but he never saw it. He never saw it. He never saw the fruit of his ministry, and yet he was faithful to God. And he, to me, is just such a beautiful example of this befriending faithfulness. He had no friends except for that one. He had nothing in terms of on earth, but his friend was his faithfulness to God. He truly had made that the most important thing. And ultimately, eternally, he'll be rewarded. He did see I hope from heaven, saw every prophecy revealed and proven true.
Yeah, and so that reminds me of someone from history that I wanted to share about. So a name that probably most everyone listening has heard is Jonathan Wesley. He was the founder of the Methodist Church. He saw great revival in his generation. He even was used by God as a linchpin in that great revival. There's actually a book titled England Before and After Wesley, right? So this was a man that was mightily used by God. The slave trade ended arguably because of Wesley's preaching, right? The Methodist revival had started in the United Kingdom, and so people were coming to Christ, and then because you come to Jesus, you can't really be okay with slavery anymore. And he impacted a man named William Wilberforce, who is the politician that was instrumental in ending the slave trade. It could strongly be argued that England did not see the bloody revolution that France saw because of Jonathan Wesley's ministry. This was a man who was mightily used by God. And there was someone else, though, who's much less famous, and his name was Samuel Wesley. He was Jonathan Wesley's dad. And this was a man, he was a pastor in the Church of England, and he served in a town where his congregants hated his guts. Okay. It's an agricultural society. So you kind of need like cows and things like that to provide for your family. They killed his cow. Okay.
Wow.
They went as far as to set his house on fire while his family was still inside of it.
Oh my goodness. Did they escape?
Yes, they did. Jonathan Wesley, though, almost didn't. In fact, it was, I don't want to butcher the story, but basically Samuel Wesley had gotten himself and his wife and all his kids out, and Jonathan was still inside on the second floor. And so he cried out to God, like, my child's going to die. And they saw Jonathan at the window. He was a little kid, like 4 years old or something like that. And they were able to get some ladders and get him out. But to be a little more lighthearted, if I had a time machine, I want to go back and listen to the sermon that Sunday because, man, I don't know what he would have talked about. Can you imagine? I know.
So he stayed in that town after they burned down his house, and he gave a sermon to them, and presumably some of those people were sitting there.
I have no idea what the sermon was, but I want to hear it because, man. I mean, just, show of hands, how many pastors listening would stay pastoring your church if your congregants burned your house down with your family inside?
Right, really?
Oh, I don't see any hands. No, I mean, but he was faithful. He was faithful because God had called him to serve there, right?
Yeah.
It was, you could, read about his life, there's much more things that he suffered. Like he was put in jail because he couldn't pay off his debts, because he didn't have any money, because his congregants hated him,
And I want to interrupt, Elijah, because I don't want to lose that word that you use, because I think it's so important for us as sidewalk people. You said he remained in that town because God had called him.
Yeah.
So I want every one of you people listening who is on the sidewalk, think about that. Are you called? Has God called you to the sidewalk? And if at this moment you're thinking, it's just not worth it, it's too hard, the weather's too awful, I'm struggling with tiny teams, whatever, did God revoke his calling?
Yeah.
If you're called, then trust that God will continue to prosper that calling. And it may not be in the way you expect or want, but he will. He is bringing the fruit of you being called to the place that he has called you.
Yeah. Yeah. And so Samuel Wesley was not able to see a lot of fruit. Right.
Mm-hmm.
He stayed faithful even though he wasn't able to see the fruit, but he befriended faithfulness. And so he left an inheritance for his children of faithfulness to Christ. Right. And so then when Jonathan Wesley, the big hallmark of his ministry was street preaching. Right. The first open air sermon that Jonathan Wesley gave, he gave standing on his father's grave.
Wow.
Right. So Samuel Wesley wasn't able to see the fruit, but his children were. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And we reap the benefit of that fruit. Right. I'm for one glad that slavery isn't a thing anymore. Right.
Right.
Yeah. And so that's the encouragement that we want to leave you with, is that if God has called you, stay faithful. Stay faithful to what he has called you to do. Befriend faithfulness. It is worth it to give Jesus our yes. It is worth it to follow him. And I want to leave you with this encouragement. You are changing history. There are babies that will be born because there was a faithful Christian on the sidewalk proclaiming the gospel. And that is changing moms and dads' hearts. And that affects generations. There are generations that will come after that child because there was a Christian who gave Christ their yes. So stay with it.
Amen and amen. And that is such an important point, that baby is part of a whole network of human beings that will feel the loss, whether they know it or not. But they will feel the absence of that child. Great sermon there, Pastor Elijah. And I appreciate so much these thoughts. And it's such an encouragement to me. And I'm sure it's an encouragement to all of you.
Yep. So we have reached the end of our time. You can find the article on sidewalksforlife.com. You can reach us with questions or suggestions at Elijah@lovelife.org and Vicky@lovelife.org. That's Vicky with a Y. You can also go to the gospelcenteredprolife.com website, or reach out to Vicky Vicky@lovelife.org. If you would like to become a part of our national Telegram group, if you are a part of Love Life, gone through our training. And God bless.
God bless all of you. Thanks so much for listening.
Give me an outlet for love. Give me an outlet for gratitude. I know it will cost me my life, but nothing's too precious since I met you.